well that I can provide the information you're looking for.
Yeah, no, just the general idea, I think, is you have a pretty successful community, their school garden, and I think people find it intimidating to like see the final product and be like, how the heck am I going to get to that point? Like, it
Sure.
seems just like very overwhelming. And I think,
Right. Right.
yeah, so that's just my goal,
Yeah.
is to shed some light on your experience and
Sure.
what yeah, your thoughts and stuff. So, yeah.
Awesome.
My first question is, how did you get where you are? Which is a huge, lofty question, but however you want to answer, it's just fine.
Yeah, no, it is pretty lofty, but I think I think I can provide a little bit of an insight with this. I will share with you that I personally have a deep interest and passion for gardening. So that's where it starts. Um, and here at school, it was probably back in 2016, I started conversations with teachers and with administration to find out if there was any interest out there in terms of having something like what we have now on our property. And I'll be honest with you, there is at one point we had talked about having a garden closer to the highway. So it would have, really great exposure to traffic going by. So then, there would be, as well as, it helps with accountability, knowing that there are a lot of people that are driving by. So you get, want to stay on top of things and everything. And it actually went to the school board, that conversation. And then I'll be honest with you, I can't recall exactly what ended up happening, but that got put on the back burner and didn't, develop into fruition. I think it was just the timing of everything. So I'll be honest with you, the conversation then led itself to, let's get it closer to the building. And so what's nice is that we have space, in the School District. The building itself is it's still fairly new, and there's a lot of space, a lot of flat area to really provide that opportunity. And when we first talked about having type of a garden, just between teachers and myself, it was basically just a couple beds, really. I think we had first talked about it being more like a space that was, I think it was like 20 by 20. And now our space is 60 by 60.
Yeah.
So, and the conversation actually ended up lending itself to, let's have the space be an outdoor learning classroom. So that's why it grew into the space that it is now. We just wanted to make sure that there was enough area for kids to have a seat, to congregate, to explore, and then of course do that gardening piece along with it. So that's why it ended up being the space that it is. But really the partnerships, the teachers, champions within the teachers, we had a few teachers that had a passion themselves, and then they shared that with their kids in the classroom. And that's, kind of where it ended up going in that point. So we ended up finally getting approval in 2018.
From the school board?
Yeah, forward through some partnerships that put some funding that would support it as well. So that made a big difference also. Obviously when school board's making a decision, one of their decisions is always going to be, well, what's the budget for this and who's maintaining it? Because that's a big immense commitment.
Yeah.
And so I was ensuring that the staff would not need to be a part of the maintaining of the space itself, so that that was something that was then the other piece, starting kids process as well. So the kids actually came up with the name. They came up with the design for the the sign. Mr. General, our tech teacher, he was a part of the building of the sign and the pergola in that space. Pat team, that's another great partnership that we have, our parents and teachers together team. They're the ones that provided the funding to support the pergola. We had some community families that came forward and donated items, donated the garden shed, donated the compost tumbler. We had another family that came forward and said, well, you need benches out there. So made some beautiful benches. So for the kids to, have their space and make that space be like a classroom. So lots of different partnerships that really helped with that piece. And then also, some conversations that happened, in a meeting setting to talk about what's the objectives, what are our objectives here, what is it that we want to promote, and collective effort from a variety of people. So that was a part of the planning process and continues to be too. So
how does that look? What does that look like now as far as the planning process for the garden? Do you meet with teachers? I'm curious.
Well, I'll be honest with you, with COVID, this past year, none of that happened. It was more or less sending out information to teachers about, where we're at and the space provided. And there was I did a lot of promoting of using this space area, because kids, especially in our 3rd through 5th grade, actually elementary, they have mask breaks throughout the day. So I was really trying to promote that this space can be also used for that, just to come on out and have that space and take the mask off so they can have that break. And so it wasn't just a classroom, it wasn't, only to be a part of the gardening scene. It was also a space to take a break, which called Cardinal Retreat and Garden Area. So the whole sense behind the retreat is really a place to take a break. So we have not met as a collective group all year. And actually, since in March, we did not have any meeting. We didn't have a meeting during the spring either. So none of that's really been, it's been more of emails and one-on-one conversations and things like that. So that should get back up and running come next fall, I would hope.
Yeah, so, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes. Because I know that, we're going to talk a little bit about successes and challenges, but one of them is, the management of those beds, and what the timing of it is, what the schedule of it is.
As a challenge?
Yeah, in a way, because, our growing season goes basically from late winter until late fall. So that doesn't really coincide with the school year. And a teacher has a class, they have their students, sleep from fall, spring. So much of the time with, to coordinate that growing season with the class gets to be a challenge, because they move on to another class then come fall. So if you want those students to who may be involved in the springtime activity, you want them to be involved in the fall and early winter time activities, so they can see their harvest. They can be a part of that process from beginning of seedling to the harvest of the produce. So so what I did actually initially was encourage teachers to manage their beds from the end of spring through the following spring. No, let me take that back. I apologize. Scratch that.
Okay.
Initially, it was from fall to fall.
Okay.
But it still isn't, it doesn't, you know, it's not the best method of helping kids to see that process from, you know, seedling to produce.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges I have with our with this process with our cardinal retreat and garden area, because it's unless students and teachers work together so that when a class is grade and that particular teacher, you know, plants seeds, or that group plant seeds in the spring, it would hope that maybe they have a connection with the fourth grade teacher, so those kids that move on to fourth grade can then pick up where they left off with the fourth grade teacher. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's a challenge to figure that piece out. But I mean, there are a few other challenges too, but that's one of them, is to figure out that piece. And that's part of that conversation I had with the teachers. And of course, we haven't had those meetings to figure those pieces out, but
to kind of create the communication so teachers can understand that.
Yeah, and to help with students being involved with the whole process. So they're not just involved in the planting, or not just involved with the harvest. They actually see their plants from seedling to the harvest season.
Which is the fun part. I mean, it's all fun, but you know, when there's
with our after school program, typically we have students that repeat and continue our program. So then those students are able to participate in that process. So right now we're planting, and a good chance that these same students will have with us an after school program come fall. So they'll be able to see that, but that's not necessarily the case with our classroom teachers. So
yeah, that makes sense. I think we could, since we're on the topic of challenges, we could we can keep rolling with that, and then talk about successes next. So what other, that's a large challenge. What other challenges have you faced?
Well, the other challenge, the main challenge, is managing the beds during the summer. So oftentimes what we've done is encourage summer school programming to be a part of that picture. But even then, summer school ends mid-July. So that management between mid-July and September is a challenge. Obviously, that is also a time where, you know, that's when it's the warmest. That's when we need, you know, probably the most watering. That's when the fruits or the vegetables are really at most of them are at their deepest growing stages. So we really need to foster those plants, and help them grow to that harvest time. So that is a challenge. And to have a rotation of management has been a challenge on my end.
So what do you look for as far as management help? Do you have volunteers, teachers, or all fall back onto you? What does that look like?
Well, this past year, obviously because of COVID, again, that's been a challenge to even find, you know, community members to have that communication. But the year before that, yes, there would be a rotation of family members, but even then it was difficult. So much of it did fall back onto my shoulders. And we did have one other teacher who she's in charge, or had been in charge, of the pollinator garden, which is on the other end of the building. And so she and I would communicate as to when we would come and water. And so the two of us, if one of us wasn't going to be around, we would be in touch with the other one to find, can you check on the garden, on, you know, the cardinal retreat garden, or she would ask me, can you check on the pollinator garden? So it just all depended upon, you know, that schedule. And that was helpful, having her also be a part of that scene.
Absolutely.
So,
Is that,
go ahead there, Dan. I'm sorry.
as you look towards this summer, do you
Yeah.
see that? What does it look like for you?
It's going to continue to be similar to that, to be honest with you. We really don't have, I haven't had any community members or teachers that have come forward and said, I'm interested in helping manage this. On the same hand, I need a little bit more footwork to seek out those champions to help with that process. And the other piece of this is to be okay with that. So I too need to be okay with that. So sometimes I feel as though, if I'm going to hand the reins over, I want to ensure we back in the fall, these plants are ready and thriving, and that success is had. Kids need to see success in order to really want to foster the love of gardening into their future. So I kind of feel like I put that on my shoulders. So I really do need to make sure that one, when it is we have community members assist, that I'm feeling great about that, and that we come back to that success too. And we've had, some in the past, so I'm sure we can and again. And I just need to do a little bit more footwork to find those champions to help. So,
which is, I'm sure, a challenge, especially during COVID. It kind of, everyone's on lockdown.
It is, and sometimes I don't want to impose on people because it's a big chore, it's a big job. To maintain that space is big. So, and then we added 3 more beds now, plus we're going to add a grapevine. So it's, there's some new plants that's going to be a part of that space, and so we need to take care of them and see them to their deepest growth.
Yes. I saw, let's see, lots of berries, right, are going to go in the new beds, and a grapevine.
Yes. Yeah, we have blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, and a grapevine.
That's exciting.
So, yes. Yeah, we're going to have to figure those pieces out too. Most of them will go in the new beds. The grapevine won't, but the other ones will. But I see that we're going to need more soil. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did. Yeah, they dumped it all in there, and there was still quite a bit of space.
Yeah, we're going to need more, and we're going to have to figure that piece out yet. So, yeah, but that's the other big challenge is the management during the summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like that's cohesive across the board with what I've heard with community gardens because of the time that they're growing, and teachers are off typically and want to be off. So,
well, sure. I mean, yeah, and that stands to reason. I mean, I've got my own garden too, and it's like double. So, but I enjoy it, so it's all good. But I totally understand it from a teacher's perspective and even a community member's perspective that they have their own needs that need attention. So I totally get that.
Yeah. So those are the main challenges that you faced. What about successes that you've seen? Let's switch it up a bit.
I think that the biggest success I've seen is the variety of classes and groups of kids that have been out in that space. Most of the groups have been our elementary groups, but we have had some middle school and high school interaction as well, which is really cool to see. Initially, we had it was across the board balanced. We had high school science had a bed. We had a middle school teacher that had a bed, or a group that had a bed. And then we had a good spattering of elementary classes that also had a bed. So that was really cool to see. I really enjoyed seeing the fact that they're being used. And I think the other thing there is that the retreat piece to it, the classroom space has been very, not that you need to know how to garden to go in that space. You can just go there for a lot of other purposes. And we do want to promote the fact that when you're out in nature, when you're out near plants, there's a lot of good that comes from that. You don't have to be a master gardener to be in that space. So we've had a lot of interaction of just kids being in that space to hang out, which is awesome, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The other thing that's been a super success, in my opinion, is that that space has been respected. There have been a lot of conversations about what are you going to do when they toilet paper it, or what are you going to do, you know, for homecoming or whatever, and or what are you going to do when someone steals something, or what are you going to do when they damage those trees? And we've had this space in place since 2018, and we have zero. We haven't even had one. I think if there was toilet paper, it was blown over there from the high school side. It wasn't, there hasn't been any, it's been respected, which is really awesome to see. So I'm really happy about that. The other thing is that we've got a nice, we've been very blessed to be able to have a variety of fruit and veggies happening in that space. So, you know, there's apple trees. Now we're going to have berries, and of course the beds have, you know, the plantings that they have. So it's really neat to see that it's not just all veggies. You know, it's we've got a nice a good start to having a good variety of things happening there. So, or what is growing there, which is very cool to see. I love to see the variety, and kids get they talk, they ask questions about it. So, and that's what we want. We want positive minds and an exploration and figuring out and being and pursue that. So that's been awesome. It's really been great.
Yeah.
And a lot of conversations from staff too. So I don't know, like you noticed that when you were over there last night, much of that space was already weeded because high schoolers came around and they had cleanup day yesterday, and there was one group that stayed back. And of course, as they went around the building, I actually did, you know, I did do a little bit of, well, if you get in space, you know, we could need help with just pulling what is in the mulched area. You don't worry about the mulched area is fine. And I wasn't expecting them to get much done, to be honest with you, because I knew they had the whole, you know, the whole school space to take care of. They got quite a bit done. So
I saw the wheelbarrow full.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, so that's great to see that involvement, because I think the more you have kids involved in those pieces, the better. So we had the beds, we had kids that filled the beds, of course now planted in the beds. So the more involvement they have, the more ownership they have, and pride that they have in what is there. So that has been awesome to see. I'm really happy about that. Of course, anytime after school program has a nice day now, we're over there. We're over there checking it out. What's the latest and greatest, and what if, you know, just exploring. What do you think of this? Let's find out what's growing now. I mean, every day is a new thing that can be, you know, checked out, which is awesome. So
and so fun to see. I had a conversation with a middle schooler waiting to get picked up, and he when I first got there before after school program came, he was just looking at the berries and like looking at reading the tags and stuff. He's like, this is super cool. Like 2 of them were reading the tags. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, like in their free time, the middle schoolers are reading about plants. I'm like, this is cool. Yeah. One got picked up and the other one didn't. And so he's like, yeah, you see that bed over there with the hoops on it? You know, they cover it with this stuff, you know, like a blue house. And I'm like, do you mean a greenhouse? And he's like, yeah, different color.
Yeah, different color. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, cool. And he's like, yeah, so you can do that in the winter and stuff. And it was just cool to see the excitement. So yeah, I could. And
you know, I think the other thing too is that that adults also feel like they don't have to know all about gardening to be in that space, because I think sometimes that can be intimidating. It's like as if you know, if you're a teacher that has a specific area that you're teaching and you go into another person's classroom of a different subject area, you feel like a fish out of water and maybe a little intimidated with the fact that, well, I'm an expert in this area, but I'm in another area now. I really don't feel real comfortable. Well, this space should provide of exploration and hopefully confidence in knowing, you know, what permaculture is, how to grow your own food, and just knowing that each plant, each year is a new exploration of some sort, because you're always learning no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything you're going to continue to learn, it's going to be in the garden. There's no, you just don't end there. It's not like you learn the subject and you're done. You know what I mean? It continues on. It really does. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping that I hope that promotes, it gets promoted for our staff and even our parents and guardians, you know, so that they feel okay and learn the confidence in growing their own food, really.
Yep. And I think too, just in the name, the fact that you have Cardinal Retreat in there makes it more welcoming for people that don't know how to garden. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, and there's enough space, you know, with the benches and everything. It just means that you can come and sit down if you want and not have to feel like you got to work in the beds, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That it is. It's such a cool space. So you've definitely shared some lessons that you've learned. Are there any that you haven't shared yet that you would like to?
I would say that a continual search of partnerships, and anytime you talk with anyone that has a passion for gardening, I think you can really tap into them potentially sharing that passion that could lend itself to even a piece of whatever it is that you want to see or whatever objectives you have with the space that you have. And the other piece, the other part to this too, is that as you know, we have Grow Together Wisconsin in place. That grant is also helping support a lot what's happening in that space. And as a result, much of the harvest will end up going to our Necedah food pantry. So some great things happening there, because again, kids need to have an opportunity to give back, and that is that's almost mind-blowing, and it really does help foster that kid's growth. So so yeah, taking a look at resources, potentially grants to help support the funding associated, and then those champions within your community. I mean, that's huge.
How do you
footwork goes along with it. I was going to say just a little footwork that goes along with it to find those people. So.
Yeah, that was my question, is how do you go about creating partnerships or finding the champions? You know, for someone who is looking at doing that.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I think the first thing is to get in touch the UW Extension office and make a connection with master program. I think that's a great place to start, because they can then identify potential people in the community associated that would have that interest. And they may not even be, you know, in the Master Gardener program, but they can start with identifying who are those community members that love to garden or really dig food, you know, and just kind of go from there. So as far as like resources that are grant associated, Googling grants that are garden associated is a great place. There's a lot, there are a ton of garden grants out there. Everything from, I think Home Depot used to have one. I don't know if they do anymore, but everything from like a big store like that to that's associated with the UW Extension and the state itself. there are just so many grants to help support even bits and pieces of what person have in mind. And to start small, you don't have to have a big space. A couple raised beds and some dirt and seeds, and you're good to go to help to start that process. And then of course having kids be part of that scene also helps foster interest. That could lend itself to, well, my mom and dad like to garden, and that's how it, that's sometimes how it starts too.
Mm-hmm. And then it branches out into families, and yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. What if you had to do it over again, which thank God you don't, but if you would restart it and do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Oh, I think I would have that management piece figured out better. I don't really have a very good management piece planned out, especially in association with the school year. That is really huge. The other thing is and this is something I'm working on, I'm hoping this next year, is to offer, instead of asking teachers, would you like to utilize a bed, and just kind of leave it open to whatever it is that they want to utilize or however way they want to use it. I'd like to offer kind of a set plan of maybe a salsa garden or a rainbow garden. And that way then there's a little more direction with, what do I do with this space? And sometimes I think teachers are so incredibly busy now with so many things going on, and then on top of it, COVID. The more you can place a plan in front of them, the more likely they will be able to be interested and follow through with that particular plan. It's not that they have to do it that way, but offering those options might be interesting to other teachers to take on a bed and to manage it. So that's another thing that I hadn't done in the past, and I would like to try, is to offer those type of gardening ideas to help them plan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And my next question was, if you had advice for teachers on how to incorporate gardening into it. That kind of touches that a little bit, but do you have any other thoughts on that?
I would recommend that, and there's some really great resources associated with gardening that are I can't even tell you where to begin. Got Dirt or Get Dirt, I think, is one of them. I don't know. You'll have to edit that out, Dana. I can't remember which one it is, but anyway, there is such a large source of resources, or a large list of resources associated with gardening, and linked to standards, linked to math, linked to literacy, history. I mean, all across the board. It's just every type of subject material out there can be linked to gardening. But it does help to have a plan in place to make that link. And like I said, such as having ideas or options that are associated with the salsa garden or the rainbow garden or things like that might be helpful. And then coordinate with your other teachers or team to identify that management piece. And I think that most teachers that participate now, they start their seeds obviously in like March or April. So tapping into resources as to how to start seeds is also huge. And I think sometimes that can be a little daunting, because then, what if I don't have a window? What if it's space, where do I put this? And how big will it grow? When do I start? All those questions It'd be great if you had a kit that says, if you want to start beans before planting them in the garden, here's a how-to kit for your beans. This is what you need, etc. I think those are pieces that help teachers to figure things out and to encourage them to try it.
That makes.
And I know there are sources out there that are associated. I don't have them specifically, but I'm sure that, could probably tap into the master gardeners to put together something like that to help teachers.
That was my thought, master gardeners or farm to school or. Yep.
Well, and obviously the partnership that we have has been huge. So I so appreciate the farm to school program, because it's just been fabulous for our after school program in